Tell us about your experience at the airport. We got to go to Van Nuys today, and it was a lot of fun for us. So tell us about your experience there.
Well, LA City, we went LA City and LA County. I think you guys were at LA County Air Attack, down the alley there, yeah, you never know it's there, right? But those planes are sitting there. LA rents those planes. I'm sure you're talking. Those planes sit there all day, just ready to go. I see them occasionally flying over my house, and we spent some time at LA City to look at their rescue helicopters, and then we spent a majority of our time out at him at Ryan.
Yeah, CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE is the Department of Forestry and Fire Protection in California, so they do all of the California wildland fires, and that's the majority of the time. That's the aircraft you'll see, and I know you'll probably be seeing a lot of that in the next meeting. But CAL FIRE, we parachuted in with them very early on, and they were pretty much our consultants throughout the entire process. We tied in with the battalion chief named Travis Alexander, and he opened up the doors for us. We visited several of their air attack bases, went to training exercises up in Redding, California. California had water dropped on us from the planes. Got entrenched with the smoke jumpers.
Is there a separate unit? The smoke jumpers are a separate unit from air attack.
Yeah, it's the U.S. Forest Service, so they're different, but they do once a year in the summer come together and work in tandem because that's what they'll do. Because you have to have the smoke jumpers working the fire on the line as well as from the air. So we got a lot of experience with them, and they came in and really were involved throughout the 4-year process of making the movie, which is also another important fact. It took 4 years to make it, even though it was a year after the first movie. We didn't just snap our fingers and be done. It doesn't really have an animation. I wish it did, but it takes a long time to make the movie. So we usually spend a good year just doing the research that Bob's talking about, and that you'll see over there. But then throughout the 3 years of production, many of the researchers that we come in contact with, we were constantly going back asking questions because it always affects the story. Bob has this question on the script. We want to be sure dialogue is accurate, so we ask them, if this radio chatter, what would you say in this circumstance? And how the airplanes, fight a forest fire. We want to be sure that ballet was accurate on the screen. And even the sound effects. When the smoke jumpers came down and worked with our sound designer, hearing the sound effects we were creating for the fire, to be sure that it sounded to him like if he's in the middle of a fire, is that what it sounds like? So it's very important to us to bring as much truth and accuracy to our storytelling, so that at the end of the day, it's believable to you. But even more so, since we dedicated the movie to firefighters, right, which you saw, when they're watching the movie, we want them to be something they're proud of.
One of the tasks is obviously tell a great story, but also to get you to forget about that are anthropomorphized talking vehicles and actually think of them as characters. And to do that, we have to tether as much of it to truth as possible. Right down to the way the vehicles drive on the ground, the way the planes fly. All the flight in the movie is accurate except for one scene. Well, we've all seen lots of movies. There's a certain filmic language that's used, and so even though this is animation is not a real camera, we treat the camera real. Where is it? Is it hooked to the plane? Is it on the ground? Is it a crane shot? Is it a dolly? All those sorts of things. It's because that will make you forget that they're talking vehicles, because it feels comfortable to you when you're watching it. It feels right. And then getting the fire. We spent 2.5 years to get the fire, to design the fire system for the movie, so that we could produce the movie, because almost half the film has high-level effects in it: water, fire, smoke. We spent a lot of time at the parks.
Yeah, that's part of the research, and getting the National Park Service involved. The rangers, they came in here and gave us feedback. Obviously, we spent a lot of time there. Our art director, who kind of designs the world you see behind us. I mean, he spent a lot of time in both parks, touring, taking pictures, asking questions on how stuff was formed. What would be, what kind of trees would be, populated in certain areas. And so, we built, trees. We had over 2.5 million trees in this park, that we had to populate. So it's, because again, it's a 3D space, so everything you see is actual, it's actual, data. So it makes this movie, like Bob was saying with the fire, such a big undertaking for us. It's the biggest visual effects movie we've done at this studio to date because of the fire and this world that we built. with the national park system, so it was huge. But I mean, it was just a joy, and it was important for us too. The anniversary of Yosemite is coming up, so we were a part of that. It's kind of important for us to pay tribute to firefighters, but also kind of pay tribute to the national park system. As we come into an age where everything is so digital, and people get lost. When we were kids, you got in your car and you went on family vacations, and you didn't have all this stuff to distract you. You really enjoyed being out in nature, so we really like that aspect of it too. Is open up the doors to kids that may not have gotten out and experienced that yet, and show there's a whole world out there that's real, not digital, that you can go out and see. So that was fun.
Yeah, thank you.
We had the head of national parks come see the film, and
obviously the lodge is based heavily on the Old Faithful Inn. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But there's little tiny details that people won't even notice. They would never notice. The train station, which is on this side, is actually a train station that no longer exists. It was in the north part of Yellowstone. It's since been destroyed, but it's by the same architect as the Old Faithful Inn. So it's sort of a tribute to that architect who put that train station there. And people say like, "Oh, why is there a train in the movie?" Because John Lasser loves trains. That's one. It's not the only. Yeah, never hurts. And if you make a train with John, it's accurate. I mean, that train, every detail. But the national parks, the railroads were a big part of building the lodges. To get people out to the west. Most population of the country is on the East Coast, and everybody on the East Coast were going to Europe. So they wanted to try to draw tourism out to the west. So the railroads built these lodges to draw tourism out, so when these tourists came out, they would have a lovely place to stay. So there's a connection historically of trains and the lodges. So that's why we put the train in the movie. So a lot of the choices are made a lot through research, and that sort of like kind of tells us what to do. Jammer's over there. Jammer. If you aren't familiar with it, are the tour buses, the classic tour buses that were used in the parks here and still used at Glacier National Park. They're used at Yellowstone. They were called jammers because they would jam their gears when they were trying to make it up the hills. So that's where his name comes from. And so all those things, you may not know it, and it's okay if you don't. But it's fun to have your choices, a reason you're making your choices. It's not just a random choice, but it's come out of research and things like that. You might think we just sat around and tried to come up with funny names for things, but we didn't. We were at Yellowstone and we were driving around past the lake to go to one of the smaller lodges, and there was a sign that said boat rentals. And I said, "Oh, boat rentals." And I went, "Boat rentals."
Genius!
So, the littlest things can come out of that, and, as well as very big things.
Yeah, Windlifter, that again kind of goes back to our research, kind of the same thing Bob's talking about, the train in the lodge. For firefighting, Native Americans have a long history of wildland firefighting. Part of the hot shot crews, which are the crews, smoke jumpers are the guys that parachute in and they work on the ground, but hot shots are the ones that will kind of drive as far as they can in and then hike in. And American Indians are a big part of actually both of those.
Smoke jumpers.
Yeah, both of those organizations being a part of that. So we felt like, well, that's important for us to pay tribute, twofold, that, and then also, Bob's really interested in having a character that just kind of had a connection, with the nature, which naturally kind of ties in, the spirituality of, American Indians with the land. So we wanted to kind of tie that in. So both of those together kind of helped us come up with Windlifter, Wes Studi, Cherokee Indian, great actor from Bob's hometown, so they hit it off. And he's, such a fantastic actor, and he really brought, like all our actors, they really embodied the characters, and a lot of what he says, came from Wes.
And we have consultants that we work with, so the tales he's telling are true tales. They're I like that term, folk tales, because we want to be sensitive. They're not religious stories; they're folk tales, and we tweaked them slightly, and we worked with a consultant on those to make sure they're accurate. It's also important to know that Windlifter is not clairvoyant. The reason he knows there's a fire or knows the speed of the winds is through his connection with nature. He can smell the fire in the air. He says, he looks up at the branches, the tree branches move, and then he says the wind speed. Because he's not clairvoyant. He's actually, he knows by how much the trees are moving what the wind speed is. Which is another thing we worked with our consultant, because he always talked about like the rain dance wasn't to make rain, it's when they knew through sort of the drop very much pressure, or whatever way it goes.
It will come.
That rain was coming, so it was to celebrate the rain coming. So things like that, we wanted to be sensitive to that culture. Well, the difference between a big difference between live action and animation is, one of the big differences is, in live action you write a script, and then you go out and you shoot it, and a lot of it's kind of made in the editorial, and maybe you do reshoots, and the turnaround of a live action movie can be fairly quickly, actually. I mean, the scripts can be, they work the script a lot, but you really don't know the movie until you see it on the screen. In animation, we get to go through lots of iterations. We write a script, and then we do storyboards, and we do then we edit that together with the storyboards with temporary music and temporary effects and things like that. And then we all watch the movie, and then we all look at it, and then we again, here we work like, as with Pixar or Disney Animation Studios, we have a story trust, which are the other directors, and we all get together and we critique the film and get notes, and you look for consensus in the room on what was working, what was not working. Then you tear it down, build it again, and then you do that again, and you do that again, and you do that again, and you do that again. So when you're actually watching the movie, you're seeing the 7th or 8th or 9th version of the film, versus in live action where, again, you might be seeing the 2nd version, because they shot it, they looked at it, they got some notes, and some reshoots, and they put it out there.